Ever since American paste manufacturers came out with clear premixed adhesives around the end of the 1980s, it's been a problem having residue of paste end up on woodwork and trim because you don't see the clear adhesive after it dries. Now, what happens over time is, and with some adhesives, is that they oxidize, and when they looked clear on the day that you finish the job, 6 months later or a year later, they turn brown. So I have always tried to be very clean when wiping up after paper hanging, wiping up the trim, that is. But still, there are instances where I come back to a job and I look and I see a haze of paste that I missed. Now, here in my kitchen, I hung a fabric back vinyl about 3 years ago using Dynamite 234 premixed adhesive, and I noticed that there was some residue by the hinges that prevented the sponge from getting in there into that crevice to really clean it well. So I wondered if there was some sort of lighting that would be a better lighting to see this, or maybe a better lighting to indicate that you had left some residue on the woodwork. So I bought one of these ultraviolet flashlights you can get on eBay for about 10 or 15 bucks to see if ultraviolet would be a better indicator of paste residue. I turned off all the lights in the room, and I turned the flashlight, or the ultraviolet flashlight, on in an area that I knew was clean, and then I traveled down, and you can see in the space between the hinge and the wallpaper there is a gap that obviously my sponge did not get into very well, and I left a haze of premixed Dynamite 234 there. And you can see that the ultraviolet really brings out the residue. So I wondered if now I was hanging the wallpaper today, would the paste shine as brightly with the ultraviolet light? Last week, I made an X of paste with my fingertip. I took a little dab of 234, made an X. The same thing for Professional, or Roman's Professional 838, made the X. And then Roman's Professional 880 and made an X, and tried to see if they showed up well that day, before they were dry, after they were dry. I found that there wasn't that much difference, but they did look more pronounced with the ultraviolet light after they were allowed to dry for an hour or two. I found out that Professional 838 really shows up well under ultraviolet light when the paste is relatively fresh and not aged. So I guess I could say or recommend that if you use 838, you don't really have to do anything to alter the paste. Just get your ultraviolet light and shine it on the baseboard or the wood trim the day that you're hanging it, and you'll get a good indicator that you left paste, and you just wipe it up with some warm water. But what if you don't use 838, or what if you use another kind of paste? Is there a way you could put some sort of indicator in it that would help to indicate where you left paste on the woodwork? On a side note, there is a way that paper hangers have used clay-based adhesives as an indicator. What you do is you mix a little bit of clay, which would be Roman 732 or Dynamite 111, into the clear, so that when it dries it leaves that hazy clay and you can see it right away. But clay is getting harder and harder to get, and some people don't like to use clay in there. So I wondered, is there a way to do this just with a clear, not using the clay-based indicator? Doing a little research on the internet, I discovered that a lot of ordinary household laundry detergents that are whitening detergents use an ingredient that is fluorescent and shows up well in ultraviolet light. Now, I know a lot of people would laugh if I said to add this to your paste, and I wouldn't really want to add it to my paste either, because I don't really know if the detergent is going to affect the adhesion of the material or if it's going to affect the installation in some other way. So I got an empty spray bottle, filled it halfway with water, and put a very small amount of Tide whitening detergent in it, mixed it up, and sprayed it on the dried adhesive that wasn't showing up well after it had dried. After letting these sprayed samples dry completely, which took around an hour, you can see that it gives a little bit of a boost to the 234, which didn't show up well before, and now it does show up well as the 880. It gives it just a little bit extra visibility. And down at the bottom here is another thing I did. I took 234 and I actually added Tide directly to it, and it shows up really well. Now, whether adding that to the paste would actually affect something, I guess is the subject for a video on another day.